Welcome to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor. Really pleased to have Terry Lynch with me. He's the CEO of Power Metallic Mines. It's a company that's up and coming. It is covered in my newsletter. I like the story very much, and there's some pretty heavy hitter investors involved in that story. So I'm going to ask Terry a little bit about that today. But the main reason I wanted to have Terry on was to talk about short selling, in particular, naked short selling, and why that is egregious, why it is harmful to individual companies and to investors and so on and so forth. And Terry has done a lot of due diligence and has gained a lot of understanding of how the short sellers are wrecking a lot of little companies. I think the companies that are really susceptible to short selling, to this kind of egregious short selling, are the companies that are looking to the future. And they might not have, mining companies, exploration companies, for sure don't have any production. They don't have cash flows. So these guys can sit back and say, well, that's just, you say you're going to find, gold and silver and platinum and everything else. Well, yeah, show me. I don't believe it. And then they can send out some nasty reports and get people to doubt and people, yeah. And so if they're shorting ahead of that, and then, they can really do a number on companies. The same with technology companies that biotech or otherwise technology companies that don't have any production right now, but they're looking to the future. It's not to say that they don't have something in the future that's real, but if they don't have cash flow, they're easy targets, I think. Before I say hello to Terry, I do want to say that I'm not getting paid for this interview by Terry, by Power Metallic, or by HydroGraph, or anybody else. So I just wanted to be clear about that, because there have been some very silly allegations over the last week that some of us have been getting lots and lots of money to pump and then dump. I think the guys that are accusing us are probably the pump and dump guys on the opposite side. But anyway, that said, welcome, Terry, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Jay, it's always a pleasure to get on your show and talk to you. You're a fresh breath of air in this community, so we're always happy to see you.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Terry. And you're a straight shooter as well. I've known you for many years. Okay, naked shorts. Explain to us what a naked short is and how that varies from a regular short. I've always thought that short selling was okay. I mean, what's wrong with short selling? You have a conviction that something is overpriced. You go out and you borrow shares, and then you sell them into the market, drive the price down. But you have an obligation to pay those shares back from who you borrowed it to. But as I understand, naked shorts don't do that. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So I'm with you on that. I'm not against short selling. I think that's a healthy part of the market, and we're believers that you should be able to take the other side of the bet.
Sure.
The whole point is it's all about transparency. The market needs to know that you're naked. You know what I mean? That you've borrowed the shares, and they take that into their valuation. And that the real trauma is a system that's been allowed to manifest both in Canada and the United States, where people are naked shorting stocks, but they're not reporting it. And so that leads to, massive amounts of selling. And then, normal investors sort of see a lot of selling. And if the stock's not going up, mostly, heavy selling volume will push the stock down in absence of any other sort of extraordinary event. And so what happens is that people just that are ordinary investors think, hey, there's some news I don't understand out there. All this selling is happening. I should sell too. So, that old euphemism, selling begets selling, is, it's the psychology of the market. It definitely happens. And so that's why it's important for it to be transparent, because if market participants knew that the selling was naked short, then they would know, oh, okay, so this guy is taking the bet on the other side, but it's, but he's also exposed that if it goes against him, that means this thing is going to, it's going to tear up his face.
Right.
So that gives, the guy who's actually, bought a position, done his due diligence, and is comfortable with whatever the investment might be, he may decide to hold, he may decide to buy more stock. Those are decisions that are, sort of determined, I guess, by the investment. But, at least it's done with the disclosure. So unfortunately, I think when it all really started to go awry, Jay, from my research, was back in 2012 when they actually took off the tick test. Up until 2012, basically on all exchanges around the world, if you wanted to sell a stock short, it had to be going up. You couldn't sell it; it was going down. Because if you think about, what are why do we have exchanges? Well, today, it's really for the banks and the hedge funds to make money. It's what it used to be for. What it really is designed for is for companies to access greater pools of capital, and for investors to access greater pools of opportunity. And exchanges and hedge funds and investment banks all were basically tools to help those things perform more efficiently. But they've somewhat lost the plot, I believe, and now these things have a life of their own. And so in Canada, for example, there's an egregious clause called short market exempt, SME, and it basically it allows it's basically the clause that allows market makers to make a market. So market makers will often be short a stock for moments of time, or even hours of the time in a trading day. But generally, they're supposed to be market neutral on every day, and they're supposed to close out neutral, and maybe occasionally they'll close out positive or negative. But generally, that they're pretty well policed by the regulators, FINRA in the U.S., CIRO in Canada, and they would be neutral. But that technique, the short market exempt technique, where when they're trading, they don't market a trade short. Well, unbeknownst to us, but when they got rid of the tick test, they the regulators allowed bot trading or institutional trading, where you're trading computer to computer. They allowed these bots to have short market exempt status. Now, I only figured this out about a year ago, I think, maybe even 10 months ago. And I told Eric Sprott, I told Paul Beatty, I told a member of my investment funds that were in my deals and stuff like that, and they were like, no, that's not true. And I said, no, it's true. And I showed them my correspondence with Cyril that, in fact, it is true. And so this is how, unfortunately, they manufacture the paper, and it allows for a distorted market vision. And the implications are pretty broad. Jay, I'll give you a statistic that, I started an organization called Save Canadian Mining with Eric Sprott and Rob McEwen and Keith Neurmeyer and Sean Rusen, just a bunch of, high-profile mining executives that see this day to day and wanted to do something about it. And the idea was, to go to the regulators and the provincial, finance ministers who are responsible for securities and say, guys, look, we're killing the golden goose here. We're killing our capital markets. And to that point, in Canada last year, we raised $40 billion or $20 billion, which is last year, every other year, up until then, was like 100 billion or more. And you sort of think, that's pretty drastic, right? 20 billion in the US is like a good IPO.
Right.
It seems. Exactly. So when you think about that, it's really very, very scary because you need capital to grow any enterprise, whether it be a mining or a technology. And yet investors aren't stupid. So if they feel they're being taken advantage of and not playing in a fair game, they figure it out, and they buy real estate, they buy crypto, they can find other things to do with their money, and that's unfortunately what's happened, and why I think our mining markets in particular have been savage, because as you noted at the at the start of this conversation, that the technology and early stage mining companies have great ideas, and sometimes proof that great ideas are working, whether that being growing resources or certain advances in technology that are proven by, whether it be, phase 1 or phase 2 trials, or, whatever advancements there might be to qualify. So creating value theoretically that ultimately could be realized and could create giant pools of cash flow in the future, whether they get there themselves or they sell it to some bigger company to develop it. That's another step on the commercial development process. But they're vulnerable because they need capital. They don't have cash. They're not sustainable. So the market knows they're coming. And this is, I think what happened is, it started in 2012, and then it really accelerated with the cannabis, craze, I will call it. And then where there's such massive interest in retail, and the hedgies took advantage of that in a big way. And I think they learned all the tricks about how they manipulate the market there. And now they've carried it forward, with mining, with other technology stocks, and so there you have it. So generally speaking, it's just a situation where people are selling stock they don't own, and they haven't borrowed. Okay, and they're not disclosing that.
Oh, okay.
So that's a naked short.
So they're not actually even borrowing them.
They
I
don't borrow it.
sort of understood that maybe they were borrowing them, but it wasn't disclosed. They were borrowing shares, but it wasn't disclosed. What you're saying is they don't even borrow the shares. And how
You
do
know
they
what?
do that then? What are
Most times they don't borrow, from what I understand,
the,
because the failures to deliver, like
uh,
even on Power Metallic today, 50% of our trades do not close on a daily basis.
really?
But yeah. So I mean, because we're tracking this stuff,
Uh-huh.
we've developed our own data sources, and from bona fide stuff that you could take to a trial court and use as evidence. And so we know that they're not delivering the stock. If they borrow the stock, they would be delivering it. The
Exactly.
failure, yeah. If you have a failure to deliver, it's because you don't have the stock.
Hmm.
So Australia does it better. They have other issues, but they do a better job, which is I think why ASX has been a better performer. Is you can't even sell a stock if you don't have the stock in your account.
Hmm.
There's no failures to deliver down there, as far as I know.
Oh,
And so, whereas here, man, it's atrocious.
yeah.
And I don't know how they get away with it. That part is still a mystery to me. It's certainly hard for individuals to get away with it, but I think what happens with these bots, they have these bots are trading hundreds of stocks, have
Hmm.
hundreds of millions, maybe even billions of dollars in capital. So there's never any shortage. You're never out of a compliance on a capital basis,
Yeah.
and they're putting these up, and of course they're generating huge fees for whoever's on the other side of the trade, like
Right.
the
Right.
brokers and banks, and of course these are tough times, so these fees are probably what's keeping the banks in a profit position. So but it's sort of like I did an article on X. I talked about the cod fishery. I grew up in the Maritimes,
Oh,
and years back we lost our cod fishery in Newfoundland. I'm a Nova Scotian there, but we had many Nova Scotians impacted as well. But and we lost it because we basically just were not watching the depleting volumes of cod and allowing everyone to come in and just rape it.
uh-huh.
And it's like and then all of a sudden it was gone. And it's sort of like here we are in our capital markets. It's been going on it's been going on for like since 2012, and
Hmm.
now we're at a 4 alarm fire side time. This is now like, holy cow, last year we only raised $20 billion. Capital markets for mining should be robust. Jay, you know this. I
Yeah.
mean, we're the market cycle, we're in a top quartile commodities market. We're
Yeah,
likely to head into a commodities boom. Money should be flooding into this space,
absolutely.
and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even today, yesterday I was talking to a good junior mining company that I've invested in, has got great results, good management, doing the right thing. Man, he was telling me about the struggles he's got just to raise additional capital. And I thought, wow, and this is a solid guy. He's a veteran. He's
Hmm.
done well. He's got good results. And I'm thinking, but yeah, of course there's risk, but I mean, God, these things should be getting funded,
Yeah.
and if you don't have an exceptional project, man, it's tough. I mean, we've
Yeah.
been lucky at Power Metallic. We have an exceptional project, but even with
Yes, you
that,
do.
it's we've got it funded, and we're in great shape, thanks God. But I see many of my peers and many people with a lot of resources in the ground and have done a lot of great work not being rewarded.
Struggling.
So it's and this is why, because the problem is they're not being rewarded because investors are shy because they're getting abused by these guys.
Yeah.
And there's many ways they do it. I mean, you mentioned at the top about HydroGraph, and
Yeah.
I was reminding you that I was at the show with you in February when
Yeah.
HydroGraph presented,
In
and
Toronto, right? Yeah.
yeah, and the nice lady gave a great presentation. I thought I made a note. Literally, I made my notes, buy some, and of course, being an idiot, I didn't buy any because I was just
You're right.
preoccupied. I was in a
Of
sell mode,
course. You're running a company.
selling Power Metallic and not investing. But and then and of course I've seen sort of the the big volumes, and I don't know Kevin Bambrough, but I follow him on X, and he's a very bright
Hmm.
guy, and
Hmm.
I respect his thoughts, and I respect you, and I saw that presentation, and I think that's a very interesting market. But I saw what's happened in the last couple of days, and
Yeah.
it. I mean, this is the tactics, right?
Yeah.
They come out with a lot of uh, inaccurate information.
Hmm.
They twist things the worst possible way,
Yeah.
and then probably they're selling stock they don't know, on top of everything else, and then of course that's a terrible burden for the a young company like HydroGraph to have to overcome,
Yeah.
because that whole where there's smoke there's fire thing
Hmm.
is still sits as a thought in people's heads, and they're thinking,
Yeah.
you got a lot of things you can invest in, and it's like you start to hear noise and stuff like that, and you're thinking, gee, another
Yeah.
scam or whatever, and you just move along, and it's sort of like it's sort of super unfair. But I understand as an investor, just the fear,
Yeah.
people, fear and greed drive investments, right? So if you make people fearful, they don't invest, and so what these guys are masters at is creating fear, and it's
Right.
really really harmful
Right.
to otherwise promising companies that still probably need development capital to move along, and if you cut people off from their capital source, you will kill them.
Yeah.
That's just for sure.
Well,
And
I might just say with regard to Hydrograph, they are not a miner, so and their margins look like they're going to be tremendous, and they're probably some non-dilutive financing methods that they can pull together, and Bambrough is helping them think along those lines as well. But I want to ask you, Terry, though, with regard then, how can this be fixed? I guess transparency, you said. But you have these bots, these algorithms that are being used in massive amounts of trades. I guess first of all, governments are always behind this new technology, so they probably don't have a clue how to how to make these markets transparent.
you know what, it's funny, you're that's very accurate, I would say, because when I've met premiers and finance ministers on this crusade, and generally, well, obviously super knowledgeable and smart people in their own right, these nuances, which I had to learn, they have to learn as well, and it seems a bit opaque, but I think they're getting the message now. I was talking at the Prime Minister's office maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on power metallic business and
Mhm.
stuff, and I went through this whole thing, and they were like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "This is a national security issue for you
Yeah,
guys. I
right.
know it's not federal government mandate to deal with securities; that's a provincial jurisdiction. But national security of the country is a mandate, and this
Mhm.
is crippling our national economy.
Mhm.
Raising 20 billion for Canada, that's appalling."
Sure.
And so I think they're looking at it, and I think that thanks to our good friend President Trump, who's shaking Canada to its core with the 51st state stuff, I think he's probably motivated the feds and the provinces to maybe get their act together, and long overdue. Probably not the way I would have hoped it would have come, but
Yep.
nonetheless, a wake up call was needed for us in Canada, and hopefully we're taking it with the right messages. Hey, we got to improve, we got to repair. Now what's interesting and exciting, Jay, is CIRO, which is our national regulator here, put out a proposal for comments on
Mhm.
basically having a a 1 day uh, failure to deliver sort of regime, where if you make a trade and you don't close within a day, they'll immediately buy you in. That's generally the thrust of this conversation, or new proposal. And
Mhm.
I believe, if they actually did that, and I asked them, I said, would this apply to the short market exempt people as well? And they said yes.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, I mean, if you guys do that, then I'm 100% supportive of that, and we'll,
Mhm.
assuming there's no loopholes that because they generally seem to leave loopholes, and these bad guys, these hedge funds and bad operators that are taking advantage of the situation. One thing we can say about them, they are smart guys,
Yeah.
and they're very well capitalized. So
Uh-huh.
I have nothing but, as in terms of intelligence and actions and capabilities, they're the best in the business. So I respect them. I obviously morality, not my morality to do this,
Oh,
what they're
uh-huh.
doing. But the sad part is, I'm not even convinced it's illegal to naked short in Canada.
It's not
Uh,
illegal. You're saying you're not convinced that it
I,
is
I'm
illegal.
not. I'm not convinced. They
It's
they they
morally
they
wrong. It's morally reprehensible, but it's not illegal. Is
and,
what,
and they and they say it's illegal, but if you actually look at it, no, it's not really illegal. I don't
you know,
believe it's illegal.
they say
I
it's
think,
illegal because in their heart of hearts they know it's immoral. They know it's
yeah,
wrong. They know it's rape and stealing.
yeah,
But
but
I think you hit on something, Terry, a little while ago when you said who benefits from this. I mean, if you have companies that are really hurting and can go out and raise some capital, even they don't care if the thing goes to zero, as long as they can keep milking it, milking it, milking it, right? And so you got a geologist out there that's finding some more stuff, and so he can raise some more money. And the last thing they want is for that company to become independently wealthy, so they don't need the banks anymore. It's a little bit like socialist governments. They don't really want people to be independent and prosperous, because if they are, then they can't give other people's money away to them to get elected and have power. So, but this for the bankers, it's about money. It's about, the bankers that can find people that are on their heels, that are going bankrupt. Oh, we'll save you. We'll take care of you. We'll let you stay in as CEO, but here's what you got to do. And it's
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. I think when I look at it, and I was saying this to one of the premiers, I was saying we need to save the banks from themselves, because at the end of the day, in Canada, the Globe and Mail, which is our national newspaper, estimated something like $100 billion has come out of the capital markets. Okay, $100 billion. Well,
mm,
we know 90% of all financial assets in Canada are in the major banks.
mhm,
So imagine they would have an extra $90 billion in their banks, and
mhm.
they're making their 1-2% whatever.
Yeah,
So think of the profits they're leaving on the table by that they've destroyed the capital markets by 100 billion.
yeah,
Yeah, they're making money. For sure, they're making money. On stock lending and prop trading.
yeah,
Using these tactics, but they've killed the goose. They're killing the cod fishery.
yeah,
They're
right.
killing the capital
Yeah.
markets, and it's like, and what's happening is that you look at us, like, we're older guys. This
Mhm.
is our, the younger people. Why are they going to come into businesses like this if there's no realistic opportunity to grow in a fair way? Well, they're not. They're going to choose other options in life, and that's just depressing, because you think about Canada. We're such thought leaders and major players in the mining industry, but man, we're getting old up here.
Yeah.
And like we're losing so much young talent is not coming in the business, and now that we're heading, I believe, into a bull market, we're going to miss that. And the Aussies are picking it up. And it's like, when you lose an ecosystem, very hard to build it back up.
Oh, for
So
sure.
for me, the message I'm saying to the politicians is, we're pretty much down to the cod fishery stages. We need to support the infrastructure here. We need to fix it. And the solution is not that dramatic. This proposal that Ciro had, is a if they input it, would be a solid step forward. It wouldn't solve all the problems, but it would probably solve 80% of them, and we get a booming market, Jay, like we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Because you and I both know there's so many valid companies that are trading at 10, 20 cents on the dollar
Right.
that could get revalued. And once I'll tell you one thing about the hedgies, once they decide that the game is over on the short side, they're going to
Mhm.
go real quick to the long side,
Oh,
because they're
sure.
also smart people and they
Yeah.
got tons of capital, and they'll move on. So this thing will go from like doghouse to penthouse real quick. And I
Well,
really think that's why I've said to people, look, even as bad as it is, you should be putting your money into these deals now. Find your 10 deals that you really love,
mhm.
to have your half weightings and double weightings or whatever. That's everyone's got their own approach to this, but get in now, because but find the ones that have got real discoveries. And
Mhm.
maybe you keep something for
Right.
flyers, but that's my view. That's just me. Everyone's got their own personal approach.
Right.
But I've been around enough that I can tell a discovery that's got legs from
Sure.
something that's just
Yeah.
probably BS, but
Yeah.
or mostly hope. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not prepared for hope. I'd rather buy the
No,
discounted
we're too
stuff
old
that's
for
looking
hope
good.
now. Well, Terry, so how you've used this, you've done this research, you're using this information, you set up systems to sort of I guess to try to see what the volume is, what were are you finding a way to protect your own shareholders by accumulating this knowledge? And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you feel that Power Metallic has been, maybe
Sure.
have you been seeing some issues
Oh
with the
yeah, we
charts?
we, we we continuously fight these guys. And generally, and we haven't got a magic solution. I'd love to say we had. What we have done is we've definitely tracked the damages,
Hmm.
and we're gathering proof. So one of the quivers in our bow at some point, we may well go back and have a massive lawsuit against these guys. But we're not. That's sort of we're keeping the data. Our primary focus is just growing the ore body, and it's going to be so big that we're going to blow these guys out of the water anyway. That's sort of our internal.
Yeah, I
thinking.
think you are. I think
You know.
you're one of the select few that have a big enough ore body deposit. You can't call it an ore body yet.
Yeah, a mineralized zone
with lots of upside, and I'd like you to just maybe talk a little bit about that. I should tell the viewers that it's you trade in Canada under PNPN and PNPNF in the US. 229 million shares. That sound right?
Yeah.
About about a penny or two under when I looked at it US. So you say a 230 million market cap US money,
Yep.
something like that. So you're pretty good size for a lot of the little Canadian juniors. You're moving up, and you have some very significant shareholders. Tell us who some of your large shareholders are.
Yeah, we've been very blessed. We've got Robert Friedland.
Right.
He led our last 2 rounds. Rob McEwen, he's been in our last 3 rounds. Gina Reinhardt, Faraday family. We got basically about 15 billionaires in the deal, and that's how we financed it. We basically financed pretty much ourselves all the way through. The last round we did with BMO and Hannam Capital Partners, Taylor Collison, Roth, and Red Cloud. But up until then, we had raised all the money ourselves. Generally speaking, just because that was the only way we could get capitalized, And we what the project is a high grade polymetallic. So polymetallic just means multiple minerals. So in our case, we started off as a nickel company. In fact, we were called Power Nickel for a year or so, and it was a nickel deposit. And then in looking for more nickel, we found this massive copper, platinum, palladium, high grade on top of it. And we stepped out 5.5 kilometers away and found this zone, and we were getting, crazy grades, like, 32 meters of 7% copper equivalent, and 40
nuts.
meters.
Yeah.
Like it's just insane stuff.
Yeah.
Our top 5 holes averaged over 21 meters of 8% copper equivalent. That was using 950 platinum palladium. Pardon me, I'm at my daughter's cottage in Nova Scotia.
You have a fly that's really a pest there.
This fly is just harassing me. Anyway, that's the shorts. They're training the flies. No,
they must be. They want to shut you up.
So we've been blessed with this type of deposit. It's called an orthomagmatic nickel copper sulfur, and it's basically been about 20 of them in the history of the world. The last one was Sakatti of Anglo American in Finland, and before that, Voisey's Bay in Canada. And the biggest, and these mines are literally the most profitable mines in the world because they're super high grade, and so so you're pulling out very valuable rock. It's sort of $500 to $1,000 a ton, that type of stuff. And the biggest mine in the world, the only mine that's worth more than $1 trillion worth of metal in the ground, Norilsk, is the same deposit. So we don't know how big this is going to be. That's the big question. So we've got some analysts are saying sort of in the 8 to 13 million tons of material right now. Sort of 5 to 7% copper equivalent. We'll see. We think at the end of the day, Sakatti was 40 million tons, Voisey's Bay 140 million tons. We would get there very soon. And to Sakatti, will we get to Voisey's Bay? It's got the potential, Jay. And we just picked up a lot of new land up there that we're quite enthused about. We almost quadruple our land package 3.5 times. So we think this is going to become a district. So there'll be not just we think the Lion Zone becomes a mine and Nisk becomes a mine, but possibly other mines. So we're pretty stoked about that, and we're excited, and we're blessed that we raised the 50 million in cash at the end of February. So we're all cashed up. We're in the midst of a 100,000 meter drill program, so we're pretty excited about that, and we'll start getting news out hopefully next week.
Oh, okay.
And then pretty much for the next every 3 or 4 weeks after that, pretty much for the next 18 months. So should be fairly newsy, and we'll see. We're excited.
How far will the 50 million take you? That you're fully
and 26
till when? Through 2026?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I
Okay.
mean, I
And
mean,
you're,
like every other miner, at some point we will add capital, but we certainly won't do it down here. I think one of the things we're looking at doing is listing in New York.
New York
So we'll
Exchange,
get
yeah.
that done fairly soon in the fall. We think, the reason why we were able to raise that much money in this very difficult mining market was that I think they looked, the investors, and these were literally the top mining investors in the world, I would say. They looked and they sort of saw, well, they're trading at 20, 30 cents on the dollar, what they've already found. And it looks like they can find a lot more.
Hmm.
So I think that's still a consistent thesis. So, and in fact, right now you can buy the stock at cheaper prices than the last round. The last round was done at a buck 45 Canadian, and
Uh-huh.
I last check was like a buck 37 or something like that. So
Yeah.
so it's like always, Canadian stocks seem to dip in the summertime as there's a lack of news in summer, and then when the fall comes, that's when news starts to come, and then the stocks tend to
Yeah.
perform better. So I would expect that would happen for us, but nobody's Nostradamus, so nobody can say exactly. But I feel like we're certainly going to deliver the news, and then the market will do what the market does.
Well, I hope people pay attention to you and my subscribers especially. I would like to have you on sometime to do a full picture of your
Yeah, happy
company
to do that. Happy to
and
do that. I'm I'm
because I
I'm
think it's
I'm I'm hopeful. Like, one of the things we're doing at Save Canadian Mining is we're probably going to broaden our horizon and go to Save Canadian markets, just because it's, as you note, it's not just mining, it's other things. We're probably going to bring in some new leadership. I've
mm,
been carrying the flag, but I'm so busy with Power Metallic now. I'm actually slowing the movement down.
mhm.
Not good. So I'll probably just step back and become chairman of the board. And we've recruited a great board, and we're about to hire a great national figure to campaign for us,
Good.
for fairness and transparency. And our plan will be twofold: to basically embarrass the governments into action,
Hmm.
be one step, and second step, litigate.
Hmm.
So we believe there's major malfeasance happens here, even though the naked shorting, is questionable whether it's legal or not. But that's just the start of it. You get into what happened to your the HydroGraph
Yeah,
deal, and then you get like basically these BS articles carrying lots of
right.
falsehoods and stuff like that,
Falsehoods. Yeah,
and
innuendo and just
spoofing,
falsehoods. Yeah,
spoofing, which is where they post these huge bids saying they're going to sell stock, and then you try and hit those bids and they go away. I don't know
yeah,
if you've seen
right.
that.
Yeah,
That
I've
that,
seen it.
that happens all the time in our deal. Where and they'll try and suppress your movement by showing that there's huge sellers, but the sellers are not real. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that is definitely illegal,
yeah.
and there's definitely some cases of that. There's this pretty good one, Quantum Biopharma, where I'm on the board of. One of the reasons why I joined, other than I like their tech package too, is they have that in spades. They've done a really great job, and they're suing the major banks for $500 million, Quantum, and their case is so good that the lawyers have taken it on spec. They put up a bit of money. The rest is on spec. So they got
Mhm.
major A stream lawyers suing the banks for that dough.
Oh.
So it's like they might get their uppings there. I think I'm looking forward to that.
Get
We're hoping.
somebody like that. So Terry, let me just ask you as we sort of wrap up here, what if people want to get behind you and your organization, well, how can they do that?
Yeah, so you could go to savecanadianmining.com and
Safehavenmining.com?
savecanadianmining.com.
Save Canadian Mining. Okay.
Yep, and there's a donate button there, and you could hit there. You can certainly register on our website, and we're going to be doing some with the new team coming in, whatnot. We're going to be getting a lot more active, and we think that honestly now is the time to make the change, because there is going to be a commodity bull market that will happen.
Hmm.
You and I both know this will
Yeah.
happen, and now this commodity bull market's coming at a time when the markets, the commodity markets, on the company side has probably never been so low. I mean, it's never been
Yeah.
so weak at this stage of a
Right.
commodity market recovery. So for investors, it will be a phenomenal time. And I say to people that are listening, look, I get that you can't maybe stomach, buying a power metallic because maybe it's just, too risky for you, whatever. Well, I get that. Buy a good, mining mutual fund. Okay.
Hmm.
You know, get into Van Eck, you know, get into McKinsey, get into 1832, get into Palace Capital, get into BT Global. There's a lot of really great mining fund managers out there that
Hmm.
will give you a lot more, sleep at night,
Yeah.
by no bid, and you won't miss this major move. And once you get in, you'll be more likely to say, hey, you know what, now that I'm getting comfortable in this space, maybe I'll take a shot at Power Metallic, or I'll take a shot at HydroGraph or whatever,
Yeah.
and whatever it makes sense to you. And I think that'll help you ease in, but don't not get in. Is my honest to God, I really believe people will, I told people back in February that I thought this was the bottom, and bingo, it was very
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
But I think we're still early days.
Yeah,
We're
I
not
do too.
off the start line yet.
Yeah.
So it's a great time to be looking, and I get, be careful for sure. But generally speaking, you're buying some very good companies that have made the discoveries,
Right.
and you're buying
Right.
them for pre-discovery prices, man. It's
Right.
it's phenomenal.
Well, that's for sure. And the major gold miners too right now are just making tons of
Well, the
profit.
cash flow from those
And
guys is
cash flow
great.
is enormous. And
Yeah.
the shares are starting to perform now. I heard maybe the the gold fund down here, and it's GDX, I guess, maybe
Yeah.
it performed Nvidia the first so far this year, something like
Well, there you go.
that. So
Well,
well, anyway, but I think you're right, Terry. I think it's just the beginning, and I think there's an awful lot more to go. And I thank you so much for spending time with us and helping us understand the short seller issue. It is immoral, I think, what's going on. The deception of people, the fear mongering, and of course, there are people you have to ask, who's benefiting from this? And I think you hit on that a little too clearly. So
yeah.
well, I just want to congratulate you on the work you're doing, and to the extent we can be helpful in sending people your way, that would be great. So,
All right, Jay. Well, listen, we appreciate the exposure, and wish you and your subscribers lots of great investment success, and
thank you.
have a wonderful rest of the summer. Cheers for now.
Thank you. You too. All right, folks. Well, that is it for today. Keep your eyes on on your inbox because I think Carrie Landis is going to be with us to talk a little bit about hydrograph and providing some alternative views to some of the spectacular short sale garbage that's been out there recently. So that's it for today. Until then, till we meet again, goodbye and God's blessings to you.